Good evening. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting, October 27th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. I want to acknowledge our Finance Committee Chair, Councilwoman Mary Brown of the 3rd District, as well as Councilwoman Linda Barnes Caldwell, who's a member of the Finance Committee of the 5th District. We also have with us Councilman at Large Ron Brewer, Councilman at Large Glorious Lay. We have Councilwoman Ty Atkins of the 4th District, Councilman Cozy Weatherspoon of the 2nd District. This evening, we will be discussing CPO 2020-50, an ordinance appropriating monies for the purposes of defraying the expenses of the general, parks, poet, seated, CCI, CCD, MVH, LRS, fire pension, and police pension tax-based funds of the City of Gary, Indiana, for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2021, and ending December 31st, 2021, including all outstanding claims and obligations, and fixing a time when the same shall take effect. Sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary, Arlene Colvin, City Controller. We will also, in short order, and in some cases, perhaps at the same time, depending on how the conversation flows, discuss CPO 2020-51, salary ordinance, if you will, which is an ordinance approving salaries for the employees of the City of Gary's general, parks, poets, MVH pension, and fire tax-based funds for the calendar year 2021, also sponsored by Mayor Jerome A. Prince, City of Gary, and Arlene Colvin, City Controller. I'd like to begin, if it's okay with the chair, to turn to Chief of Staff Colvin to update on us on any proposed changes or thoughts or reflections in terms of our timeline or in terms of the budget as it currently stands. Attorney Colvin?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
There is one proposed change that the police chief has asked me to incorporate into the 2021 budget, and that is a change in the supportive services budget for 258. There is a position that he would like to eliminate and to distribute those funds to some of the lowest ranking people in that department, namely the animal control officers, as well as I think there are 4 clerks, maybe 5 clerks, but he'd like to distribute those dollars among those staff members. So that's a proposal that we'll be submitting. In terms of updates, I believe that the last time that we spoke about the budget at a finance committee meeting or at the council meeting, we had indicated that there had been some discussions with the FOP. And at that time, the FOP has presented a proposal for raises for the police officers, requesting a 3% raise, and they really have a 3-year proposal where they're requesting an increase in the clothing allowance, an additional vacation week, I believe, as hazard pay, and one other item. But in any case, the dollars that would be used to fund that would come from reimbursement that we'll be receiving from COVID dollars that we believe will be coming before the end of the year. And the discussion that we've had so far with the FOP is that those dollars, first of all, would only fund perhaps 1 year of their proposal in terms of the raise, and would not offer anything with regard to parity, because there is a parity requirement per ordinance at some ranks between the police and the fire departments. When I spoke to the fire chief about funding at least some portion of this parity part of it with his dollars, he had indicated that he preferred to keep his budget as he had submitted it, namely to change some of his ranks to firefighter so that he could keep the more people on the street So at this point, that's kind of where we stand with regard to them. And other than that, there haven't been any other updates to the budget.
Thank you. Okay, I think we'll probably have some further, we'll have further conversations about the FOP piece, I'm sure this evening. Okay, so taking up CPO 2020-50, do any council members have any questions, suggestions, proposals, thoughts as it relates to CPO 2020-50? Oh, you're on, yeah. Okay. Councilwoman Atkins will be speaking shortly, but we got to get her linked in here. And in the meantime, any other council persons have a question as it relates to CPO 2020-50? All right, Councilwoman Atkins.
I'm here. Give me 1 second. My bad. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm ready.
Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, I did want to present some ideas for the council to kind of review specific to CPO 2020-50. I think that the current proposal that we had, a lot of the commentary that we have seen has been that the bottom line had not changed any. And I was kind of concerned about that because as we look at some of the financials that was provided to us on the day prior to our meeting last week, which I think was the 19th, we are still running in a deficit. So to see no aggressive cost saving strategies or cost avoidance strategies, I wanted to just kind of go thoroughly line by line if possible for the proposals to see if there were some areas that we could possibly decrease. So for my assessment, looking at what was submitted to us, I kind of focused on the variable spends, which will be like the indirect spend. And so some of the outliers that I did take a look at for a proposal for some cost savings was in professional services, also printing, advertising, gasoline, overtime, and that was it. So if it's okay, I can go over those proposals. So for professional services, we had a slight decrease, and I have a spreadsheet that was submitted to the Finance Committee to review. I'm going to pull it up if you guys want to follow along. The proposed spend for professional services was about 3.26 million, a slight decrease from 2020, but there was additional savings that we could kind of push through. So the proposal that you have submitted is an additional decrease of 12% in professional services. Another deep dive that we looked at was for gasoline. A major outlier that stuck out was between the proposed 2021 and 2020 budget for general services, there was a 27% increase proposed for gasoline, going upwards to $475,000. And in 2020, we budgeted $375,000. I wanted to give some thorough insight related to this because, as most of you already know, that gasoline is a commodity that is pricing is associated based on the commodity pricing for crude oil. So I did take a deep dive to look at what the barrel pricing for crude oil was at this time comparable to last year to see if it made sense to increase $100,000 within that particular line item. I didn't know of any additional fleet that we did acquire within the first 10 months of this term that will warranted such a substantial increase. Just for record so that you can know, crude oil from October of 2019 to October 2020 has decreased almost 40%. So to see that substantial increase in that line item was concerning. So based on the analysis taken into the high and low point from 2019 to 2020, I submitted a proposal to decrease that line item by 37%. So it was just, subtracting, going back $75,000 from the 2020 budget because of the decrease that we see as the commodity across in the world. Also, the same thing in terms of the other additional line items under gasoline, we took slight decreases mainly because of the substantial decrease from where we are at the commodity-based pricing. Advertising, again, was proposed slightly higher from 2021 to 2020. And I am not sure what the statute is, but if there was any way for us to incorporate online advertising going forward. And also, again, I did do some quick calls to see if the pricing had changed in terms of advertising between 2020 and 2021. And there was like about a 3 to 5% decrease. So we did propose a 5% decrease in terms of the overall advertising spend. Well, I'm proposing it for you guys to consider. The printing spend overall was increased in the 2021 proposed budget that we received. And again, so us to focus on cost savings and cost avoidance strategies with the deficit that we're running, the proposal is for us to actually decrease this indirect variable spend by 15%. So that's professional services, the gasoline, printing, advertising. And I did want the council to consider reviewing overtime if applicable. Some of the outliers that's worth noting is for the City of Gary Fire County income tax line item, overtime pay was increased 100%. So in 2020, it was budgeted at $220,000, and the proposal that we received increased that double to $440,000. Another, not major outlier, because I kind of understand the need for police with the decrease in personnel that they recently received. I think 24 have left from the beginning of this year, but they, the proposal for that line item in terms of the police county income tax went from $220,000, which was budgeted in 2020, to $340,000. And so we did the median between those two price points of the lower end as a suggestion for the updated 2021 budget. Also within the overtime, there was a 10% decrease proposed for the civilian services, I guess maybe the best way to describe it, vehicle maintenance, as well as finance, well, not finance, vehicle maintenance, as well as general services overall. General service, they proposed $82,000, which was up 9% from 2020. And so the proposal that I submitted for you guys to consider is decreasing that 10%. So that's, again, close to the median between the 75 from 2020 and the 82. So that overall proposal is just like a 14% decrease. And that is the main items for that, not including salary and wages. The proposal that I would like for you guys to consider to think about for salary and wages overall. So overall, there was, you want to wait for 51? Okay. So that's it for 50, because 50 is just the operating budget. So
Thank you, Councilwoman Atkins. Do you have the total amount of costs or cuts or cost savings on the
yeah,
operation side? I'm following, and I think we should probably send this to all council persons as well as Attorney Colvin so that she'll be able to follow along. This is very well done, very well prepared, and I think reflects the spirit of good fiscal responsibility.
May I-
and cutting some
may
of
I-
it back.
I'm sorry.
May I respond, Mr. Chairman?
Sure. Well, let me, I think that Atkins, were you gonna,
yeah, I was going to give you guys the variance.
okay.
I have the variance including
And I was going
salary.
to ask you, Councilwoman, if you could repeat your decreases that you propose for vehicle maintenance and general services and overtime.
Yes, ma'am.
After we do that, and then we'll turn to Councilman Lay, once you give that information.
So Miss Arlene, is it best for me to give you the number?
You can
or
give me
the
the number.
percentage? Okay. So for gasoline, the total number, the new total number will be 631,713.
Okay.
For professional services, that updated number is 1,985,658. Advertising, 34,932. Printing, 69,436.
Okay.
And you need me to give you overtime too, right?
Yes, I
Okay.
wanted
All the
vehicle
ones that
maintenance
changed,
and general services.
just for overtime?
Yes.
Okay. Vehicle maintenance, 28,679.
Okay.
And what's the other one you just said?
General services.
73,800.
Okay. Once once the council members have spoken, may I make a comment or two?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilman Lay?
Yeah, mine will be in the form also of a question to Councilwoman Atkins. Did you take into account that a lame duck council and mayor put together this 2020 budget? That they're all going out of office? At least I believe it's 5 went out of office from the council, and of course the mayor changed. Did you look at the difference between the 19 budget and the 2020 budget?
I looked at what was presented to us from the deputy. That's what I looked at, the information that we all had.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm sure my question was not clear. As I understood it, you looked at the difference between the 2020 budget and the 2021 budget. Is that correct, or do I have that incorrect?
That's a part of it. And I also looked at the Form 4B information for the last 5 years. I have from 2021 to 2017.
Okay, what I'm interested in, did you take a look at the difference between the 2019 budget and the 2020 budget? That was not a lame duck council nor mayor, but
So
the 20.
I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, in my experience, you have to be very careful when you review the budget of a lame duck executive, and sometime, of course, if they both hit at the same time. The last time I ran into this, I was on the Calumet Township Board, and they butchered, and that would have been, I believe, the 19 budget. It was actually butchered. Well, let's see, the 18 budget. It was butchered by the executive who was going out. And we, of course, did not accept the new budget. Is it possible to tell me the difference between the 19 budget and the 20 budget in these various areas where you're suggesting to reduce them?
Sure. I don't have the 2020 information item by item line. I just have the 2019 information overall. So I can tell you what the operating balance was, the total funds and the operating balance was for 2019, but I don't have it by line item.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, may I ask the Chief of Staff or the City Controller, whatever title she's wearing this evening, to give me the difference between the 19 budget, 2019, and the 20 budget in the areas that are being suggested reduced by Councilwoman Atkins?
Are you saying you would like me to provide that to you?
Yes, yes, I know you probably don't have it now. Yes, the
Yes,
difference.
Mr. Chair, if I may present this information. So Ms. Arlene, I did update the Form 1 information just with those proposed suggestions in terms of decreases that I was able to analyze. So I think that might be more helpful because it's color coded line item to be able to input the 2019 information that Councilman Lay is suggesting.
Certainly have, in whatever format you want to give it to me, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that'd be easier.
But I want it specific though. I don't want the bottom line. I want.
No, it'd be, well, yeah, we'll just have to fill it in by line item.
Okay, that's fine. I just need
Yes,
to know that.
Okay.
And I would just add, if I may, that of course, the 2020 budget was passed by a lame duck mayor and to some degree a lame duck council. However, we made exhaustive changes with the new administration to that budget via an amendment at the end of February or beginning of March. I mean, dramatic changes were made, structural changes. So to some degree, we're not really dealing with a lame duck mayor's 2020 budget because the current administration did a major amendment to that budget earlier this year. So I think that's important to take into consideration as well.
We changed the professional services. I didn't realize we did that.
There were some, I believe there were some adjustments made to professional services. I know on the salaries.
Yeah, I'm aware of the salaries, but professional services wouldn't include salaries. I'm talking about.
No, yeah.
As I understand, you deducted $1 million plus from professional services. Maybe I misunderstood that figure. Is that right?
I think that's correct. But I'm
Right,
saying
I
that.
don't think we changed it by $1 million. That's why.
Oh, no. I'm just saying that whatever changes the administration wanted to make to the budget that was passed prior to their arrival, then those, we entertain a lot of changes, I believe, both to operations and salaries. Is that correct? Very few on operations.
Operational.
Right.
Very few to operations.
Yes.
But certainly, if I understood you correctly, Councilwoman, are you saying your total decreases were 3.26 million? Is that what you said?
For
Did
the
I
overall,
understand that correctly?
for the overall,
Yes.
no, it's not that much.
Okay. I don't know where I got that number from, but certainly we didn't make the 1.9 million plus whatever the other numbers are in changes
Right.
throughout the year. But I don't know if any other council member wanted to say something, but I did want to point out a couple of things with regard to the areas that Councilwoman Atkins had mentioned, if that is permissible at this time.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to point out, talk about gasoline. Historically, the city has never budgeted enough money in gasoline. Never. Right now, we have spent, and this is the end of October, we still have 2 months, which probably at some point we're going to have snow during those next 2 months. We have spent over $500,000 right now in gasoline. So what usually has happened in the past is that the year begins with bills that weren't paid the previous year. And the same thing happened this year. So what we're doing at this point is working from a past deficit plus what we actually need to allocate this year. So to cut gasoline by any amount would be really, really, it's going to be a problem at some point. So I wanted to point that out. The other reason why we are in this position in terms of gasoline is this. Your figures, Councilwoman, I appreciate them very much, but the city also has a history of not paying their bills timely in the past, and gasoline was one of those areas. At this point, hopefully, since we have been paying on a timely basis all year, perhaps this has changed. But by the end of, I'll say last year, and it didn't just start last year, so I'm not talking about, the previous administration. I'm just talking about historically what has happened in the city. We have not paid for gasoline in a timely manner to the point where we only have one vendor that has been willing to deliver gasoline, knowing that they're going to be paid late. So while those prices are probably quite accurate, are they attributable to us? No, I don't think so. We have to build a credit history so that our vendors will believe that when they bill us, they'll be paid in a reasonable amount of time. And that's what we've been trying to do all year. Hopefully, by the end of this year, we will have some credibility in that area. Like I said, this is not a problem from just the previous administration. This has been something that's been going on for a while. But I have tried to, in those areas where we've had a major problem with vendors, like NIPSCO, gasoline, other utilities, I've tried to make a major effort to make sure that those vendors were caught up so that we wouldn't have to go through this anymore. I've done the best I could with what we have, and I can only hope for the best. But I do know that cutting any of those kinds of line items will actually hurt the city.
I have a question, and I appreciate that background. Do we pay directly for the gasoline, or are we basically participating in a system where it's kind of prepaid? I know
It's
at
not
one point,
prepaid. We pay after it's delivered.
and is the amount that we pay per gallon fixed? That is to say,
Yes.
we start out the year and let's say they make it $3 a gallon, and
It's
even
fixed.
if what you say?
I said it's fixed.
It's
However,
fixed. Right.
in the past, the city has participated in the state QPA, where we had a fixed rate from the state. Those are the vendors that we were late paying, and those are the vendors who we ended up. They are the ones who have said, "City of Gary, that's okay. We'll take a pass on you." So that's how we. And I'm not saying anything against Pinkerton. I'm really glad that they were willing to provide services to us so many years. But this process is not the usual process in terms of getting gas delivery. Usually go out for a bid, whether it's through the state QPA or whether you do it on your own. Many years ago, the city just bid it out on their own.
I thought the city had I thought the city had a process at one point where we could get gasoline at a certain price.
Yeah, we
okay?
could. We used to go through the state.
And then we'll go through gas. So that's what I thought we had.
That's what we had.
Okay.
But as I said, we didn't always pay in a timely manner.
Any other questions or comments about the other changes proposed to CPO 2020-50?
So, Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer?
just to stay on the same topic about the gas, I know during the former administration, we talked about making sure that the pumps were secure, especially with codes to that aspect. Have we made those changes to make sure that we're monitoring the gas consumption of employees throughout the city?
We have. I'm trying to see if Mr. Keith is on tonight. He may be able to speak to that.
Yes, I'm on.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in the process now. We just hired a new vehicle maintenance superintendent. And one of the things he and I are charged with is to make sure that the implementation of the fuel management system is complete. That'll give us the opportunity to actually monitor gas usage per user, per vehicle. And so once he engaged our current maintenance vendor, which is Northern
Mechanical, I think.
Northern Mechanical, yes, into training and configuration of the system. Once he completes that, we will start that process.
So how are we monitoring gas now with employees?
Well, right now, the system is there, but it's not configured the way we need to configure it so we can get it item by item. And that's the reason for going through the reconfiguration and the training with the new vehicle maintenance superintendent.
So is every department right now has a code that they put in and it's just for that department, or does individual have a code or something?
Right now it's individual.
Individual. So you can monitor how much individual goes to the pump now.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And if you could, what is the current to date fuel cost? We're, I guess, now at the first month of the last quarter of the year. I'm sure you don't have that just right offhand, but maybe that's something we can look into.
I'll get that figure for you.
Thank you. And maybe if you could, Councilwoman Atkins, could you just go through in Cliff Notes fashion, broad strokes, the changes that you're suggesting and the amounts?
By item level?
Yes, so I guess like professional services, I guess where we're just making
The professional services, was that 1.9 million, Councilwoman?
Yes, ma'am. So it's it's like a 12% decrease.
Okay.
Is that right? Yeah. It's 1.985 million.
Right.
Printing decreased about 16%. Advertising decreased about 14%. And then overtime, proposed decreases is 8%.
Do you have a dollar figure for that overall, for all overtime, Councilwoman?
Yes, ma'am. The update is 1.802 million.
And can I ask a quick question about the overtime? Now, I think it was about $500,000 roughly in each category for police and fire. And then there were also some dollars being pulled from another area.
Right. Oh, and I forgot to mention that too. Councilwoman indicated that there were increases in overtime in the county income tax.
Okay, right.
And they had been like 100% increase, probably in both categories, if I remember correctly. And correct me if I'm wrong, Councilwoman.
Yes, ma'am. One of them, fire was 100% and police was 55 increase.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to point out in that regard is that if you recall, one of the things we were trying to do was to remove a good portion of our costs from the general fund, because we knew that that fund was going to be decreased by almost 3 million. So one of the things that happened was that we moved 20 additional firefighters and 20 additional policemen to the county income tax.
I did.
So proportionately, that overtime increased because you have more people now in those particular funds. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, was overtime reduced by 8%?
Councilwoman Atkins? I believe she said 8%.
8%, that's what. Could I get figures on printing and advertising? what that 16% on printing represents, you know, what the 14% on advertising represent in dollars.
Yes, sir. So for advertising, it's $34,932 will be the updated total.
Now, that's what it was reduced by?
No,
Okay, I want the reduction. What does the 14% reduction equal in dollars?
$5,625.
$5,625.
Yes, sir, for advertising.
That's all?
Yeah,
What's printing?
the proposed savings is $12,759.
Thank you.
Do we have this in a form where we can kind of just see all the particular changes?
Could I share my screen? The only thing is, I'll share what is clean. If
Mr.
that's okay.
Delavard, does she have screen sharing ability?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, so I will share these files. Now, some of them, they're not clean, but this is the gist. So this is the proposed revisions that I have for 2021. So this is the item level. And so Ms. Arlene, this is what I was saying. Once we get information, the highlighted ones are the ones that was proposed to be changed. And then we could just add a column to see what the 2019 numbers were for these line items.
Okay. And this is
so-
what you send to me so that I can use?
Yes, ma'am, I can do that.
Okay. All right.
Yes, ma'am. And I just wanted to let you know, what was sent, these notes, you can look at the notes too, because what I did, I updated these two numbers. This is for fire and department on salary, fire and police, excuse me, for salary and wages, because the numbers that was on the Form 1 was different than what was in the ordinance. And so I updated those too.
Okay.
Hold on, but I'm filtered, my bad. Okay. So these are your subtotals. This is the overall, the general fund. So the decrease is only like 2% overall from the proposed changes that I just want you guys to consider. And for Councilman Lay, this is the dollars. It's 883,053. Just the difference between those two.
That's what 1% represents?
Yes, sir. Almost 2%, 1.58%.
Is there an increase for the police in this budget now? Are you proposing an increase?
So I'm gonna go up. The numbers total that we're showing here does not have an increase, but I did just in column O put what the difference would be at like a 2% increase. So no, so the total that you see does not include an increase.
Okay, but you're proposing a 2% increase?
Well, I wanted to talk about it once we got to 51, just to get the thoughts of you all. And
Let me ask,
show.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask a question of the Chief of Staff. Maybe this whole system seems to be changing somewhat here, as I understand it. Did the FOP negotiate with the city, the executive branch, not the council, the executive branch?
We have been in negotiations with the FOP. Sergeant Wolf, on behalf of the FOP, submitted a proposal, a 3-year proposal for the police department that included raises, an increase in the clothing allowance, an additional week in pay that would be considered hazard pay, and also a floating vacation week. I think that's what it's called. So yes, we've been in discussions with them. We've not reached a conclusion, but we have been in discussions.
Well, when do you anticipate reaching a conclusion?
I have spoken to him and let him know spoken to the president of the FOP to let him know what our money situation was. I'm assuming that he'll be willing to still talk or whatever on other issues, but our finances are kind of limited and there's only so much room that we have. I'm not quite clear about what the council intends to do, so there is some limitation in terms of what I can even propose to him.
Well, I thought in the past you proposed to the council. I mean, we have the authority to increase or decrease. Why wouldn't a figure come to the council from the executive branch as opposed to the FOP?
The executive branch at this point did not propose an increase. What we proposed was a way to keep the same level of officers that we have right now. And this is for FOP I'm talking about. If you recall, the budget that was submitted to you originally had police positions removed. We had eliminated positions because we were trying to make a cut in the 101-250 or the general fund. The proposal or the amended budget that we submitted does not include those additional positions because we found out about our reimbursement from the COVID-19 money after we had actually submitted the budget, but it's proposed that we restore those positions. That's where we are.
Okay. Please forgive me. You used it very clear. Some I didn't understand. Are you proposing to the council no raises for the FOP?
No, there's no raise in this budget. No, there's not a raise. The budget we submitted did not have a raise.
What about the clothing allowance?
The clothing allowance did increase from $500 to $700.
Okay. What about whatever this floating vacation week?
We don't have any of that in there.
Okay. What about the hazardous duty week?
We don't have that in there.
Okay. So at this point, the only thing you're proposing is the change of the clothing allowance from 500 to 700.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, and I think when we get to 51, I am going to have President Wolf to speak. I think I've made it publicly known that I support raises for police at every level. And of course, we obviously have to look at the numbers, and some of these cuts may help us to do that if that's the pleasure of the council. Are there any other discussions related to?
Well, I would like to make it known, based upon the information I have, I don't see how we could possibly do what he's asking. I mean, I really don't. As a matter of fact, he has inconsistent requests before the council. He's saying he's having difficulty recruiting officers, and he's reducing the first year pay by, I believe, 50, and I'm trying to recall this from memory.
4,500.
I think it was even more than 45. I think it was 5,700, wasn't it?
I think it was about 4,500 to 4,900 or so, because they were looking at the amount of training that is paid.
Well,
basically eliminating that.
Yeah, but what he was saying was they would get a raise at the end of the first year
right,
without waiting for a raise based on their rank. But if you're having problems recruiting because of dollars, you certainly can't reduce it. I mean, that's inconsistent. So to be for an inconsistent proposal, that sounds great. Probably 5 of you will follow that, but it doesn't make sense to me. If we don't have the money, and he's asking for 3 years, that I don't see how you can possibly do that under the current financial conditions of the city. Talk about anyone getting a 3-year raise, 3 years, I guess 3% a year.
No, I don't think we're saying, I don't think he's saying an annual, every year, 3% for the next 3 years. I think we're dealing with it right now. He was proposing increasing it by 3%, not 3% every year for the next 3 years. I could be wrong, but.
I think you are. Chief of Staff, is it 3 years at 3% he's asking for?
I think that he should speak for himself.
Well, what does he ask for? Well, I'm sure when it ends up, he got 5 votes, at least that. I'm saying, what did he tell the city? In other words, I'm not asking you to speak for him. I'm asking you to regurgitate what he said to the city. Was it 3 years at 3% each year?
I was under the impression that it was 3 years, 3% in the first year. And I really thought it was 3% each year afterwards. Now that could be wrong, but that was my impression. But
Well,
even in any case, though, after 2021, the dollars that we're working with right now, I don't even know if they'll be available in 2022. So for us to agree, even for a 1-year raise that we may not be able to sustain in 2022 is problematic. I'll just say that.
Well, I would just say that a lot of this would be contingent upon the cuts that have been discussed, right? And so I think the total of that raise on an annual basis was roughly around $278,000, I believe. So I think the council lady has cut probably 5 times that amount just in operations. Nevertheless,
no,
I think that we should.
$78,000 was the
200.
No, that was the $500, as I recall. I didn't write it down, for the clothing allowance.
So there was I think it was 223,000. Well, we can go through this deeper with, he's going to present. So let's just wait until he presents and then we can respond to that, if you will. But so is there anything else on 2020-50, and then we can move into 51? And I've asked Councilwoman Atkins if you could send that to all council people,
Absolutely.
as well as the Attorney Colvin, and then we can take it from there. So I think we're clear on 50 for now. So let's move to CPO 2020-51, which is the salary ordinance. And I believe, as you indicated, Councilwoman Atkins, you have proposed changes there as well. And so if it's okay, if you could just maybe continue and we can just deal with the salary piece.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And let me be clear, my intent is only to use my skill set to help my city. And I know that we are in dire straits financially, and there's opportunity for us to implement cost saving strategy, and that's what I do. So these proposals that I took the time to analyze and submit to the council for consideration was solely me utilizing the degrees that I do have, okay? So I want you all to know that it's only in good faith and in good spirit to try to help the city. So from salaries, again, I didn't know, and there might be additional information that I'm not aware of in terms of, I guess, justification in terms of salary increases. I kind of didn't think with the current financial state, again, looking at the previous form 4Bs that we had to see the cash positions, if in fact we should consider salary increases. But I do understand that, again, Gary is substantially behind in terms of where they are for salaries. So I thought that it might be well to kind of keep this in consideration. So at a high level, the current median income in the city of Gary is $30,310. So I just didn't entertain any salary increases for current salaries higher than 30K. And also for elected officials, I didn't think that we needed any salary increases at this time. So the numbers that I would like to share with the body reflects those changes. Again, it also doesn't show any increases for fire and police, as we just stated, but I did do the disparities, the differences, the differentials between what the FOP had proposed via email in terms of those step levels or increases, so that you guys can see the dollar value. And I did take it as it was just a 3% increase, for this initial year, to be sustained until another increase was negotiated. So I'll just say the numbers, and I can show you guys the spreadsheet. So the updated number, the bottom line, was changed to 30,338,043, and that is just a 0.5% decrease. The overall savings in dollars is $133,625. And I wanted to if it would be okay, show you guys the different, if you wanted to consider, if we wanted to consider any type of increases based on what was suggested from the FOP. So to Councilman Lay's point, let me make this a little bigger. Okay. So what I did was I just wanted us to see the breakdown. So these are the descriptions. And this last one, the second class patrolman, is the suggested lower step that was proposed, if you will. In column H, these are the total salaries from the 2020 approved budget. And as we all know, when we looked at 51 for police, they did not propose any salary increases. So column K is just pulled over. The next column over shows the 3%, which is what was submitted for, to look at from the council. So with a 3% increase, and I believe these are the appropriate levels that increase will hit, this will be the updated salary per position. The $45,000 is that salary for the second class patrolman that was suggested. So based on our current staff, number of employees, which is listed in column E, so we currently have 157 employees in staff. The bottom line, this is the number that it will come to. So it's 8,461,528. That's with a 3% overall increase. That is $233,822 more than what our 2020 budget was set for. So I thought it would be good for us to just see if we entertained half of that or even 2%. And so this is what the additional columns will show. So with a 1% increase, the bottom line would be $8,344,617 in dollars. That will only be an increase of 116,000. Wait, 116,000, my bad. 116,911. Yeah, there we go. And then 2%, again, this is just from column R and S. It's showing you what your bottom line is. And this is the increase from 2020. It will be 155,881 for a 2% increase. And so I just wanted to show members of the Finance Committee and all members of the council the differences for consideration and discussion.
So Councilwoman Atkins, so I know this is police. What does the number look like for fire? Because we will have to do at least the firefighters on the fire side.
Sure. So what I did not do all the different levels for fire. And I'm sorry about that, y'all.
Well, we wouldn't have to do all the levels. We would just have to do firefighters for the entry-level firefighter for parity.
Okay. So I had a question about that because I did read the firefighters, the last agreement, or I guess the CBA between the city and the firefighter union. I know it's not active. I know it's back from 2003, but I know that there was a section that talked about parity. And so senior members of the council, you all might have to guide me on this, but I thought that if every level that you had to reflect it in terms of the level of police. So like if every level, the same levels that you give the increase to a police, you have to give those same to the fire. And from my understanding, the only level on the fire side that is not appointed, well, that is appointed is the fire chief. Is that correct? So that means from deputy chief on down the rank, you would have to give that parity pay increase. So I think.
I want to refer that to Attorney Williams.
Okay.
Before we go there, we skipped past the police very quickly. I had some questions there. We haven't resolved that one.
Well, I was just trying to see what the numbers was for firefighters too, if we were talking about any raises, because we have to consider both of them. So that was my only concern about fire. to
Yeah,
bring.
no, I wasn't questioning that. I just can't retain the figures the way you can. That's all. And I'm an accountant. Unfortunately, I did that before I went to law school. I guess my question is when you get to the bottom line, isn't he saving money by cutting someone in the police? That's where I think the logic here breaks down. These second class patrolmen, it's not on the screen now, which we seem to be still over on the fire department.
I'm sorry, sir. Give me one second.
That's okay. I'm not smart enough to get away from that one yet. Now, what was the salary? There were no second class patrolmen before?
This is a new level that they're proposing for us to implement. So no.
What was the entry level before for a policeman?
Was it just the first class patrolman, I believe, at 49,000?
So there is that $4,000 deduction. But I thought he was having, but I guess we need to get him on. He has indicated he's having problems in recruiting new people because of the entry level salary. Now he's reducing the entry level salary in order to spread it among other people, creating the problem of now recruiting. In other words, what he's doing here is the way he's saving the money. He's causing himself a problem, and certainly I have a problem how he's doing what he's doing.
I think to your point, Councilman Lay, can we have President Wolf? I know he's in the other room on a webcam. President Wolf, are you able to chime in? Mr. Delavedad?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good
You
evening.
look far away.
Yeah.
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so I want to clarify a couple of things. There's a whole lot of things going on of misinformation there. The 3-year contract was not a 3-year of 21 forward. We have not had a contract in 2019 or in 2020. You have to fill those gaps. So the proposal of a 3-year contract is to write a contract for 2019, 2020 to be the same as it was when it expired. And then the proposed changes are for 2021 only. And then once that contract, we're into that contract, then obviously you negotiate for further years. So it wasn't 3% a year for 3 years. That was not the proposal. And as many times as we met with Ms. Colvin in the city, I thought that was very clear. But the 3% was to take effect 2021 because that would be the only year of change. 19 and 20 was just to continue on from where the contract expired in 2018 to fill that gap up till 2021. So
Mr. Chairman, let me stop him here. So he hasn't spent as much time with me as he has with the chief of staff. Let me ask a question. Are you talking about a 3% contract for any year prior to 2021?
No, sir. 19, the contract that we write, if we were to write one, it would be essentially, it would be 19 and 20 would reflect what 16, 17, and 18 was. It would stay the same. We're only writing 19 and 20 just so that there's not a void in years. Then 21.
What would be, there's no 3% in the 1920, is that correct?
No, sir.
It would only be in the 21.
It's all paperwork, just to maintain that fluidity of a contract, continuing from when it expired in 18 to get us back to 21.
Why is that necessary? Why is it necessary to say anything about 19 if you're not asking for a pay increase and we went through the year 19? Why are we even discussing 19?
Well, because that's, I guess, mainly because it's the proper way to do it, being that we've lived off of that contract in 19 and 20. So if we followed that contract in 19 and 20, we essentially should just document that we were under contract for those 2 years.
Why were you not under the contract for those 2 years? What's causing the problem there?
I don't know, this is my first year as the president of FOP, so I can only be
You never
responsible.
asked the previous president what was causing the problem?
All I'm saying is I'm only responsible from here forward.
Well, I'm only responsible for forward. So I don't see any reason for me to indulge you by going back on something you don't know why we're going back. In other words, you're saying you don't know. I certainly don't know. My time began the first of this year also, which would be 20. So again, the contract for 2019-20, that should have been completed because we're 2 months left in 20. So I don't even see why I would be discussing even 20, other than you said that's the right way to do it. What happens if we do it the wrong way and just ignore it?
I don't see why we would hang ourselves up with that.
No, I'm just asking you, not why you would do it. Again, I may be foolish enough to ignore it. What happens if we ignore it? What happens if I ignore it? I'm not suggesting that the majority of the council will ignore it. What happens if I ignore it? Would that make any difference to what you're asking for?
No, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, no, it won't. I mean,
Okay.
if that's the pleasure to start off in 21, then that's what we do. I guess I'm just, it's about keeping things fluid, that there's always been a contract written throughout time. And I believe we've done that in the past where there's been a gap in years. Ms. Coleman's been here a long time. Maybe she can.
No, I've been around. I just don't understand why who was the previous president?
I didn't hear you.
Who was the president prior to you becoming president?
Terry Peck.
And is he gone or is he still on the department?
He's still on the department.
You never inquired why we didn't have a contract in the past? That seems to be
They negotiated, they just never came to an agreement.
you negotiated, but you never, therefore it was no contract if you didn't come to an agreement. There has to be an agreement by both sides for there to be a contract.
Sure, but there's no gain or loss for the city or for the FOP to write a contract filling those 2 years up, going off of the same exact contract as 2018. So, I mean, personally, I feel like we're spending way too much time on this aspect of it. I don't think that this is important.
Well, I do. I'm sorry you don't. You may have the majority, but you certainly don't. I think it's important for me to understand. You're coming forward when you're making requests, and you're making requests in areas you don't know or no one has informed you, and now you say it's of no importance. Of course it's important. I know I've been called ridiculous by one of the councilmen, but I think it's important. It's rare that a person in my life have told me 2 things, that I was ridiculous or something was unimportant I was discussing. So it is important to me to understand, but be as it may, continue.
Can I just interject? I will say that, and I can't speak for Mr. Wolf, but my interpretation or my impression of his mentioning 19 and 20, and the fact that they have not had a contract, therefore they've not had a raise, and I think it enlarges the gravity of the situation. Of course, this should have been resolved in an ideal situation 2 years ago. We know there's been continued fiscal challenges, but we've also seen a continued drop in the number of officers available. We've seen an increase in the amount of crime, and I think we have tremendous morale issues within the department. And that's from direct conversations I've had with officers as well as with President Wolf. So I think that the lack of a contract for, I guess, what could be 3 years indicates the gravity of the problem. And now we're seeking to fix the problem by moving from this point forward with some show of respect for the men and women who wear the uniform in our city, that will not only, of course, help their quality of life and be a response to the service that they provide us in this very, very difficult situation where we've seen tremendous spikes in crime, but also helping us to compete and to be able to retain officers and recruit officers when we know that they're being snapped up by neighboring cities who are able to provide greater pay and benefits with less demand and more resources. So I think in an effort to do better, that's why I support it. and support the cuts in order to make it possible. Recognizing that we probably can't do all that we might want to do, but to do something to that effect. So that's how I took it. Now, other people may have taken it differently in terms of mentioning previous years.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't understand. Now I got another word that I'm disrespecting police.
Oh, no, I didn't say you were disrespectful.
Oh, no, you used the
I
word, you're showing respect. I assume the opposite of your respect would be disrespect, which I don't have no problem with me disrespecting them. If that's what you mean, I don't agree with you on what you're trying to do with the budget.
No, that's not my intent.
I know you use that term. Mr. Wolf, let me ask another question. Prior to this year, what was the entry level for a fireman? I'm sorry, policeman, excuse me, policeman.
Entry level pay
Yes, sir.
since 2017, which was the last.
No. See, again, I'm going to be disrespectful. What is it currently, right now?
4904.
4904. Now, as I understood in our last meeting, you indicated that figure was causing you a recruitment problem. Am I correct on that, or did I misunderstand that statement?
No, sir. The retention and recruitment is what we are suffering.
Not retention, the recruitment by itself. Retention is another question. The recruitment itself.
With all due respect, it's my pitch, and my pitch, it goes hand in hand. Retention and recruitment.
I understand. Again, when you're recruiting, are you running into a recruitment problem right now with the 49,000?
Everyone runs into a recruitment problem as far as numbers.
Not everyone. I'm asking you, Mr. Wolf, did you make a statement previously that the 49,000 was not competitive with surrounding areas, therefore you were running into a recruitment problem? Let me tell you what I heard, and I'm sure I'm wrong about this, that the reason you were dropping, well, the 49 was causing you some type of recruitment problem. And what you were doing was dropping it to 45 in order that a person would receive a raise prior to being promoted. Did I have that correct? Do I have that correct?
Our biggest loss is 1 to 3 years.
It's not the question. That probably is an answer to some question. I didn't ask you anything about loss. I understand it as a statement. Did you previously make a statement? And I understand I'm summarizing that you were having a problem of recruitment. Also, one of the reasons you were reducing it, that a person would be able to achieve a raise from the second class patrolman to a first class prior to being promoted, I would assume, to the corporal level. Did you make something even close to that statement, that type of statement?
Yes.
That's what I thought. So now with the $45,000, without discussing retention, wouldn't that cause you a problem in terms of recruitment from the police academy or wherever you would getting these individuals? I assume it's from the academy. Wouldn't that be a problem?
No, it wouldn't be a problem for the simple fact that this is a common practice with police departments, and people coming into the department understand that if they make it through their training and they make it through FTO, they're going to get that big bump in pay, and then they'll be where everybody else is at. If
how long do it take to get this big bump in pay?
Their probationary year. So for the date of hire, 1 year anniversary, they would go up to the first class patrolman. And that is a very common practice. And that's why that specific thing would not be an issue for recruitment, because guys understand it. And then they look at it as that's a big raise after they complete their training.
Right, but you're also restricting them $4,000. If they receive the 49, they would get the 49 while they are, I guess, on their probationary period. So at the end of 1 year, they've received the $4,000 additional dollars. So in a subsequent year, they would receive that even if they were not promoted. Is that correct?
If it stays the way it is now, yes.
Yeah, I'm suggesting that I don't know enough to tell you that I'm going to strip the cities to do this. And I certainly have many police I respect and are my friends. I've known them over the years. But thank you. I'm sorry. You may proceed.
So the point of this was with that drop in pay is to start their career is so many officers wash out, whether it be in the academy or in training or in their probationary year. And this was looked at as a partial benefit to the city as well. So to save the city some money during that probationary year. So as far as the recruitment, and you keep going back to that between the council meeting and tonight of I'm contradicting myself about recruitment. It's not contradicting myself about recruitment because most places that they would go to are going to get that lesser pay until they're 1 year. We're proposing that, and they're looking at under 2021 proposal at 3%, that they would go up to that 50,783. So that would be a 5,783 raise for them. That's something to look forward to them. That is something that's an incentive for them to do their training correctly and get through the process. In the meantime, what it does is it boosts the morale of the current first class patrolmen who have to train the guys that are making the same money as them, and they've been there for umpteen years. So that's why that's a common thing. That's nothing that Greg Wolf invented. That's something that's common. So
That's common. That's common. Where are you talking about, in the city of Gary or somewhere else?
No, it's common at other police departments.
Somewhere else. Okay. You also seem to be taking at the savings and to correct morale, and you're spreading it among. So when Councilman Atkins come up with, let's say, the difference, you're using that difference, which could be as much as $250,000, if I'm reading it correctly.
Sure.
You're using that to pay other people to make them feel better. Is that correct? To improve.
No, because that proposal goes along with their raises. What that
Right,
does,
right. But you need to cut the salary in order to save some money, in order to prove, let's say, give the corporal almost $2,000, or it might be exactly a little bit more than 2,000, or less than, yeah, about 2,000. Is that correct? That they're using this so-called savings at the bottom to assist in the morale, but you're paying other people in the department with that money.
it'll help fund something, to answer your question, whether it be the other salaries or the fact that it costs you $4,500 to send somebody to the police academy, and it costs the city another $1,500 or $2,000 to uniform that one officer. So you're talking about saving that $5,783, which now pays for that academy. Whether it's savings there or savings in giving a first class patrolman a raise, however you look at it, it's saving somewhere. So I was looking at it from the aspect of the cost that it cost us to send a recruit to the academy is, I believe it's $4,500 or $4,800. And then it costs probably around $1,500, $2,000 to outfit an officer. So that's savings. Whether you call it spreading it amongst to make other people's feelings feel better, I don't think it's a fair assessment. It's savings to the city one way or another.
Well, you use morale. You said that the first class patrolman is teaching the second class patrolman. So I just felt it made someone feel better. That's all. You instituted the word morale. I didn't. So that maybe I converted.
Yeah, it's definitely a morale issue. It's definitely a morale issue.
Right. Well, okay.
Morale issue. Why we propose the uniform allowance, because it's a morale issue when officers chew up 3, 4, 5 uniforms a year, and it's $230 per uniform. This get up right here is $230. So
oh yeah. Well, okay. We shift from salary now to the uniform. Okay.
So that's why that was proposed. And then I don't know the different names that was the other two things are being called, but the one was a extra week vacation in lieu of a pay for hazard pay for COVID. One time, just in 2021.
Right, but that. How much money is that?
I don't understand. You mean how much money is that costs to have?
Yeah, it costs the city. Yes, it costs the city.
Well, it's a lot cheaper. I don't know what that number is.
I'm not talking about cheaper. I just asked what it was. And
I don't know
yes,
what the number is. I don't know what that number is.
but you're asking for it and you have no idea what the number is?
No, I don't. But I know per usual, Gary is a department that doesn't get what everybody else gets. And my thought of trying to do that is something that would not cost physical dollars out of the city's pocket. So instead, you're giving somebody an extra week vacation, something that's predetermined, something that allows them to work their schedules. So we're not looking at extra, either way, people are going to take time off, whether it be calling out sick or whatever the case is, it's still going to cost the city money. So do I have a dollar amount on that? No, I don't. And then the fourth item was the floating holidays. Currently, everybody who works a holiday gets a comp day. That's 8 hours you got to pay us to be off. We're saying give us those days as predetermined days at the beginning of the year so it doesn't affect the schedule. Or it's not accumulated comp time that when an officer walks out the door, the city's got to cut a check for. It's being
Back up to this sickness you mentioned. You talking about flu or something? What are you talking about? The person gets sick. They understand this sickness. They call off or something. What is that? Is that what sometimes is called flu?
I don't understand what you're saying.
No, you indicated the person would miss in some way. In other words, you said it wouldn't cost money. And
No,
of
what I'm
course,
saying is you have things like people call off sick or they take comp time. So there's a different ways that it costs the city money for an officer to be off work, just like a fireman.
right.
We all have ways that things happen that is going to cause for them to be off. To allude to your point of, well, it's costing money for you to have that vacation. Well, there's multiple ways for that to happen, whether it be compensatory time, whether it be sick time, whether it be other vacation time, whatever that case is. And
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be impolite. I'm not following you here. If we don't give this week, how do we lose money? How is this person taking off? How are they doing it?
you don't lose money. Of course you don't lose money if you don't give it to us. But what I'm saying is you're telling the officer, the morale in your police department is absolutely at the bottom right now. It's horrible. Why? Because these guys are out there busting their tails, answering these calls, two-man calls going one man at a time. The other night, we worked with 6 people in the city on midnights. Nobody worked the entire sector of Adam, which is Miller. Nobody.
What sector is not being covered at all?
That one night, it was the Miller section. Nobody was in Miller. If we got a call out there, we had to go from another sector to that sector because we only had 6 guys.
What is the inner city sector? Let's say, what sector is that? The inner city?
Midtown?
Yes.
So, that's the Baker sector.
What is that, sir?
That's the Baker sector. That's B sector.
And how many times have that been missed?
We had 2 people there.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
Councilman Brewer.
I will ask on some of these issues here. I think there need to be a in-person or executive session on it because I think it's a safety concern for the citizens. And basically, we're putting out some information that everyone shouldn't be privy to this. When we talk about certain
I
coverage.
don't mind withdrawing the question, but it certainly does not write an executive session. I don't know what part.
Well, wherever it
executive
is,
session.
the conversation be at, I don't think should be had right here, what we having here. I think we went a little too far with this part here.
So I think that if we can, and I know President Wolf he may feel like he's being deposed, but
He probably is. He probably is.
I'm definitely trying to be more.
I'm not going to give up on him. He probably is. Yes, he is being deposed. Yes, he is.
But I think if we could, probably in terms of what we're prepared to take on and what Councilwoman Atkins has presented before us is most likely the raises. And I think that Attorney Colvin has already indicated that $200 additional have been already anticipated in this budget for a uniform increase. I would just suggest that the other elements in terms of the holiday and I think it was a COVID matter as well, that those may be probably more administrative things to consider as the negotiations whenever they restart. But I think for now, we should probably just focus on the raise because it seems like the uniform is already being to some degree included in the budget. And so if we could, just in the interest of time, focus on the implications of the raise. Now, I did have a question as it relates to the $45,000. Now, how many officers are we thinking would fit into that category? Of course, that will change as each year in terms of how many new recruits are brought on. But because these numbers, I believe, add up to about 157 employees, roughly.
Yes.
And so how many are we anticipating that would be second-class patrolmen?
Well, I mean, so you have to look at it in terms of when you have police academies that go. So the next police academy is in January. So the following academy wouldn't be till probably June. So you have 2 a year typically. If we put 5 people in each academy, and you're talking probably best case scenario. Now, right now we got a good pool of candidates where we may end up with a little bit more than that in the January academy. But historically, we're putting anywhere between 3 and 6 people in the academy at a time. So if you say anywhere between 6 and 10 people per year, that's what you're looking at for that number.
And so how many people, Attorney Colvin, are we anticipating in terms of the total head count for the police department? So obviously I know 200 has been a goal and aspiration for some time, but what are we anticipating for the total employee head count for 21?
So, and Chief Evans may be on, I'm not sure, but we had looked at trying to keep our numbers the same. We had eliminated 15 positions. So we were trying to put those positions back in the county tax. So there are about 30 additional people in the county income tax.
Okay. So
total is like 187.
Okay. And we're saying that at best, that would be the 30 new recruits, potentially, not covered by this chart that we're looking at.
Well, let me put it like this. It will be 187 positions.
Okay.
Some of those positions may very well be filled. At least 10 should be because they were already in the budget.
Okay.
We transferred some people from 250, so some of those are filled as well. Now, people are leaving every day, as Sergeant Wolf pointed out. You know, we do get people who are leaving and they need to be replaced. Where they are in that process, the police chief would have to speak to that. So it would depend on where we are with vacancies as to how many of that 187 is actually vacant.
So if we have, if we have 187 budgeted and we have 157 current officers, right? Or we have 167.
Okay. All right.
157 current officers, and Sergeant Wolf is anticipating 7 to 10 new recruits at best.
Okay.
So we will have some vacancies, right, that will not be a direct cost to the city, most likely.
There would be some.
Okay.
Unless we happen to get another process for the next academy in 2021, which would be the second class of 2021, first one being January 11th, second one probably sometime May, June. Unless we had a process that was able to get done fast enough to get people into that academy class. But as everybody knows, our process is so slow that who knows if we'll make it to get somebody into that following class. Our hopes now is to get this group that we're currently processing into January. But if that don't happen, then we're going to miss the January academy and we'll have to put them in the next academy. So you have the anticipation, okay, we talk 187, that sounds great, you know, cotton candy clouds, right? But the point is we're at 157 with 4 potentially within the next 30 to 60 days that are going to not be with us anymore. And then you have one that walked into the office yesterday and put it in the retirement paperwork for January. So that's 5. So now you're talking 152. Out of that 152, 6 of them are administrators. You know, I mean, that still counts towards your manpower, of course, but I'm just saying, just put it in perspective a little bit.
What I would need to do so that we were accurate is I would need to look at the total numbers, look at how many vacancies we have, and then give you the number. That's what I have to do, Councilman.
Because this year we hired 2.
Right.
Right, we hired 2. We had 3 in the academy and an E-hire. The E-hire is still here, and we fired 2 in the academy, and we have 1 that hopefully is going to graduate. So that we have 2 that we hired this year, and that plays into the thing as well about the 45,000. We fired 2 in the academy. You know, so this happens regularly. You know, as far as whether it may not necessarily be fired in the academy, but they may not cut into field training. Or they may get in trouble while they're in their probationary year, in which they don't have to go in front of the commission, the chief will fire them, then we lose them there. So you always have to anticipate the possibility of these things happening.
One question, if I can, because we brushed over this earlier, was the parity question. And I don't think Attorney Williams got to speak to it, because I think that's very important when we're doing this analysis. Obviously, what's being proposed is up the ranks in terms of the 3% raises for police department. What is the parity requirement in terms of the rank and file for the fire department? Attorney Williams?
Yes, Mr. President. My understanding of parity, and it's just from my reading, is that it's at the entry level ranks. Therefore, whatever an officer, a police officer comes in, a firefighter would come in. Now, that's my understanding of that. I don't, and I haven't read anything that would lead me to think otherwise.
Mr. Chair, can I share this?
Yes. And Attorney Colvin, while she's sharing, is that your understanding as well?
Yes, but also I want to if you would let the police chief speak too with regard to.
Okay. Chief Evans, and then Councilwoman Atkins.
There is also a parity ordinance, Councilwoman, that I've been trying to get a copy of too.
Okay.
Chief Evans.
Yes, thank you. Thank you,
All right.
Councilman and council people. I want to speak to the hiring and how we hire and we get new recruits into the police department. As Sergeant Wolf has suggested, we are in an employees market, and that's in every field. Employees have the option to go anywhere and everywhere, especially when you don't have a rate that is competitive as your neighbor. But this is how we hire. For the past 5 years, and I mention that because we've hired everybody on the list. We've hired everybody that has applied and has gotten through the process. That process has been hampered by the individuals not wanting to come into the police department as a whole, as a profession. Currently, we have about 18 people that we currently have in the process that are left, and we're down to the last few steps of that we probably will hire for January. Understand that there are 2 academies every year that we send people to, one in January, one in July, and that stands for both the Northwest Indiana Academy as well as the academy in Plainfield. So we have 2 opportunities to hire, which will increase our ranks. Also, even though our numbers are where they are right now, some of the salary positions that are open, as Chief of Staff Coleman has said, are on our county income tax fund, but we also use some of that funding to help pay some of our overtime expenses when they run over what we have budgeted in that lane. When you don't have enough people, you have to pay overtime to cover the shifts or to get the people the coverage that you need to work for different things. I just want to put that out there and answer questions on there. So we do hire, we have hired every year. We do our best to get people in the door, and we have several hiring classes a year. We hire everybody that's eligible.
Thank you, Chief. Councilwoman Atkins, I think you were going to share something, and then we also, Attorney Williams, if you can assist us in gathering that parity ordinance. I trust your legal wisdom, but that's something we obviously should have.
Yeah, I would make it. I have no advantage over the common citizen when it comes to getting something from the clerk's office. In fact, in previous years, she's instructed that request for an ordinance has to come from the council. So I don't want to leave you with that belief. If you want it, I suggest you reduce something in writing to the clerk.
Okay, duly noted, duly noted.
That is our clerk too now.
That's right.
So
And there is a statute to that effect.
yes, that's 36.410.4, I believe.
So it's not the council of the clerk, it's the clerk of the council.
Yeah.
I'll wait. Don't worry about it.
All right, Councilman Atkins, you posted something about parity
Yeah, but this,
sharing.
oh yeah, but the ordinance will probably be better. This is just what I tried to read earlier today to kind of get a sense of how to do, how to do the numbers to propose to you guys. This is a part of the old firefighters agreement, and this is Article 27. It talks about the parity of wages. And so it might be incorrect in terms of what I want to show you guys now, taking into consideration what both Attorney Colvin and Attorney Williams just gave us, because I wanted to show you what the difference for firefighters might be, but I did assess those pay increases to the deputy chief level and down. And then there was some additional suggestions that I wanted to propose to you guys that shows in here, but the difference will be 147,000. So like 147,630. That's at 2%. That's in the middle. So I just wanted to see like, okay, how substantial will it be if we entertain something on both sides?
And also, if I might, if you look at as Attorney Williams and Attorney Colvin mentioned about the entry level, that was also our understanding because of the fact that if you look at the rank structure, the fire department's rank structure is completely different than ours. So as far as how it's broken down between firemen and then chief mechanics and inspectors and all them different things, we don't have all that. We got 4 ranks. So I don't know, that's why I didn't understand how parity could flow through the pay like that unless you're just saying with a broad spectrum of 3% for any salary. So I guess that's my confusion.
Okay, Mr. Chair, can I go over fire?
Yes.
So I wanted to propose some information for the council to consider as well related to fire. So if you guys reference your CPO 2020-51 document, there was a number of changes that was suggested. And I kind of did some research just understanding like the standard operating procedures to ensure fire safety and also proper coverage within the city of Gary. And also try to understand any corresponding policies, specific like the NFPA policies that we could use as references to what moves should be made or should not be made, again, to ensure proper coverage and safety with our firefighters. And so some of the changes that I wanted to bring to your suggestion is the need for there to be a decrease on the deputy chief. The proposals for us to have 2 at this level. And I think it was necessary for our staff to have 2 deputy chiefs. So that would be a decrease of 71,610 immediately from the budget. Also, the proposal included 3 different division chiefs currently on staff, but there was changes proposed to 2. And again, from research that I was able to get, the need for division chiefs is to support the shifts, to lead the shifts. And so if we currently run on 3 shifts, then we should probably have 3 division chiefs. So I wanted the council to consider not supporting the change of any level of division chiefs to ensure that we have coverage on each shift. Making sure that we're running fluently and not, having any issues related to fatigue. Because I believe right now, with this proposal, then it will be one person, and there's no way that they can cover 24 hours.
Am I allowed?
No, I'm still speaking. So I'm going to go through all the changes, and then I think, you could respond to them. Also, again, I just had a question in terms of the change to the lieutenant level. And I remember this was discussion points, and I think Councilman Lay had some good points when they talked about this level and testing upward to support as it relates to changes for like the captain level as well. So I wanted to ask this question. I think the lieutenants is needed for the trucks. So if you were to decrease from 9 to 3, would you still have enough coverage for the current trucks that you have? And based on the information I got, I think we currently have 5 trucks in fleet. So you probably would need at least 15 on staff in terms of lieutenants. So if we reduce to 3, again, is that in proper standards to what we want to ensure from a coverage standpoint? So I would like the council to think about possibly maintaining this level, because it was a discussion point in one of our previous committee meetings as well. The only other thing that I wanted us to think about as well, actually is 2 things. Clarification question then. So in the budget, there were supportive services roles, so civilian roles, that increases were proposed to. And I just took the same standard in terms of the other salary increases that was proposed for supportive roles outside of public safety. So if in fact the salary was greater than the Gary, Indiana median income of $30K, then we did not recognize, or I did not, recognize in terms of putting a suggestion for the council to consider an increase for these 2 roles. One of them was the EMS billing supervisor, and then the other one was a supportive services manager. And again, the numbers that I pulled from the general fund and Form 1, that total does not show any increases to police and fire. So therefore, I didn't think that if we wasn't getting our first line responders an increase, then the supportive services should not get an increase either. The last thing on 2020-51 for the department, at the bottom, there was a total for part-time, and the total was $142,000 for part-time salaries. But when I looked at the makeup of the employee type, I didn't see any roles deemed part-time. So I wasn't sure why there was a subtotal of 142,000 here. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't counted into the budget.
It's not, Councilwoman, that's an error.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Okay, that's it. I just wanted to get it out.
May the fire chief speak, Councilman?
Yes, Chief O'Donnell.
Hi, council people. Councilwoman Ty, I didn't mean to try to cut you off there. But I don't know where all the research came from, because nobody has spoken with me. First of all, let me give you a little history on the Gary Fire Department. I've been a member of the department for 23 years, and we've reduced this department quite significantly from the time I came on, where we used to have 4 ladder trucks covering the city. We had 12 fire engines in service, and we had a heavy rescue squad, which presently we don't have that anymore. Right now, covering the city on a good day, I'm running 7 engine companies. So that's 7 fire engines. And just so you guys know, the engines are the ones that carry the water. And I have 2 ladder trucks covering the city. Truck 1, which is downtown across the street from City Hall, and a truck in Midtown. I have a couple reserve rigs in my fleet. So when we come up to this number that we have 15, might need 15 lieutenants, that is not exactly accurate, because I don't have all those trucks in service, and we haven't had those trucks in service in many years. The best we sometimes get is 3 ladder trucks in service, and that would be wonderful. But however, right now I'm not able to support putting 3 in service. I do not have any lieutenants working as actual lieutenants. And to Councilman Lay's point a few months back, he is correct to a certain degree, but a lieutenant and a captain both take the same, almost the same exact identical test when we test. And also all my lieutenants right now presently are working as captains. I do not have any lieutenants working in the position of lieutenant in the fire department at all. So right now it would not make sense for me to be promoting lieutenants when I don't have a place to put them, and I'd be paying them a higher salary just to work on a back end firefighter position. We also used to have in our chief level ranks, one of the big things is I always tell everybody this on the fire department, and we all like to be promoted, myself included, is that when somebody dials 911, they don't want to see that pickup pull up to their house. They want to see a fire truck or an ambulance showing up at their residence or their business. At one time when the city of Gary had about 176,000 residents, we had about 15 chiefs on duty. The city does not require 15 battalion chiefs. And if you compare us to Hammond and South Bend, which runs the same amount of calls as we run, we're way heavier. And my chiefs right now, which are covering roughly 2 stations to themselves. And that's not feasible. Back when I came on the job, yeah, chief had maybe 3, 4 firehouses that he was in charge of. So we're not running anybody short. At one point, we used to only have 1 division chief, just up to about 2 years ago. And then Chief Bradley reinstituted 3 division chiefs and that. So they've always kind of went back and forth on those ranks. But I actually will have 3 battalion chiefs working a day. So that's 9 chiefs working every day, 24 hours. So under the old budget, we had 15 total chiefs. That was 3 division chiefs and 4 battalion chiefs out working. So the 4 times 3 is the 12, and 12 in the 3 division chiefs gave you 15 total chiefs. So the deputy chief, you are correct in that, is that Chief Stanton is presently retiring. So he will be off the books next year, and I have reduced that position. So we will only have 1 deputy chief again. But presently he has enough time to carry him until, I believe, April of 2021. Also, on NFPA standards, they are consensus standards, and you're exactly right. We are not meeting standards to begin with. We're not meeting standards on a lot of things, and that kind of gets into a tricky situation. Just as the fire we had at 17th Avenue the other week on Broadway, I had to call companies to fill in the city from other neighboring departments, in which we all do help out. But previously, when the city had, before the budget deficits, and I think we go back to the Mayor Clay's administration, when we had the budget deficits, is when a lot of this started. We've reduced our manpower and rigs from 4 men or women to 3. And we're actually supposed to probably put about 18 firefighters on a scene. And we haven't been doing that in years. And my guys are working tough out there. And I'm working out there. As you see, I'm out there in the streets still fighting fire as an administrator, because I still come from the trenches. So with that, we would love to meet NFPA standards with our rigs and having 5 trucks and everything else like that. But I can only do so much with what the city's given me. So what I provided in my budget was to change those lieutenant positions. So you need people on the bottom end. We don't need to be top heavy. So we don't need a bunch of chiefs and everybody else running around when you need firefighters out there, EMTs. And so what I provided with my budget was changing those lieutenants' positions, since all of them, once we test, will become official captains, which I am one of them, which would become a captain once we test, to take those positions and just leave 3 in my budget and convert those to firefighters. So that would hire, I believe we came up between the engineer positions and the lieutenant's positions, we came up with roughly 16 firefighters to hire. And we may be able to hire a little bit more because, or just really replace, because I have a couple people right now, same as the police department, that I have that are going off on disability retirements and things, you know, a disability retirement. So they have to come in front of the pension board and that. So my goal was to hire 20 firefighters. So really, I won't be gaining a lot. I'll just be kind of breaking even. But that's what we need. We need firefighters on the back end of fire trucks and things like that.
Okay, that makes sense, Chief O'Donnell. I have a quick follow-up question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
You stated that the battalion chiefs also are doing duties in terms of, I guess, managing the houses, for lack of a better phrase. I think that's how you articulated it. So I just had a question. Could they do the duties of the division chief?
Yeah, it's essentially the same. The division chief, the battalion, the division chief is also the in our rules and regulations is also considered the second assistant chief. So the deputy chief, they consider the first assistant chief under civil service rules, and then the division chief is considered the second. So he takes care of every day getting everything scheduled pretty much. And then the battalion chief that's downtown, battalion 1, at we just say after 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening, he's just responsible for more of the maybe call-offs that come in to make sure we are scheduling overtime, which we do on a computer-based system now. So if somebody calls off, they'll call off to their station. The captain at the station will tell the battalion chief, and then the battalion chief will put out to hire a person for overtime and then plug that person in.
Okay. And then I think for one of your reasons in terms of the truck, you said that you only have 2 trucks in service.
Yes, ma'am.
Are the other ones workable? Is it just that you don't use the other ones?
Yeah, some of them are working. I can't tell you exactly every day, because what happens is a truck will be working, and then that truck will, you know, our fleet is old, especially with trucks. So sometimes the truck is working and then it breaks, and I got to pull a spare truck. So your goal is always to have a couple spares when one of your frontline apparatus go down.
So they should be in service.
It's not that they should. It would be ideal to be in service, but we also don't have the manpower. If you put them in service, our overtime would just more than skyrocket than where it's at now, and we haven't been able to do that in years. So it would be ideal to have. Really, I need a rescue truck to be going in service, and I've talked with chief of staff and that, because of all the industry we have. We used to have a heavy rescue, which took care of our specialized hazardous materials, our dive incidents, every working fire in the city, any of our industries where we can have machine rescue, hazardous materials, high angle rescue. And we lost that rescue squad, which is sorely needed. And we're trying to figure out a way to bring that back.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm clear. So the lieutenant is needed for the trucks. It would be ideal for us to be able to utilize all of the trucks that we have. You're only currently using 2, but you are reducing the lieutenant count. But it's the reason why we're not utilizing the max that we have in that particular truck or truck unit is because of lack of manpower, but we're reducing that area of manpower that's needed for that.
I don't want to say I'm reducing. I'm actually I'm changing them to firefighter positions. And what I did was I actually added 3 more captain's positions to my budget. And to give you, and the reason I did that, so I think originally I had 30 captains, and I added 3 more captains, which would give you 33. And that was going to be 1 floating captain a turn. So with having 1 floating captain, if a captain called off on vacation, sick leave, then that captain that was floating the city on that turn would fill in that position. Instead, I think some people they wanted a couple lieutenants positions left in the budget, so I left them in there. But essentially, with not having enough double house in the city. My captains are riding trucks right now.
Mhm,
So captains have been riding the trucks for years,
mhm.
you know.
And the 3 additional captain includes the 1 division chief that you changed to a
I
captain.
Yes, ma'am. And that was and then we would have promoted. You could, and I just stole that idea from Hammond, because they run 2 captains, a captain on a truck and a captain on an engine. And 1 captain was a senior captain. So actually I was trying to give to the union, saying, hey, I won't make you promote for lieutenant, because why don't you just promote for captain? And then if we do have a double house, again, that would be considered a double house, ma'am. If we did have a double house again, then hey, you just put 2 captains in the house, and 1 could technically get a little bit of incentive pay. That's what Hammond does. I think they give 1 captain an extra $1,200, and he's responsible for getting equipment and everything like that. So he gets a little bit of a bonus.
Okay. And my last comment, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, I'm learning municipal government in terms of operations, but I do know, like in manufacturing unions, you have to be careful when you're utilizing other members to do other position jobs. So, for example, you stated that the battalion chief sometimes does the division chief role, but there's no pay that they're receiving for doing those particular roles. Is that correct in my assessment?
Yes and no. What we talked about, we do some differential pay, and we were talking for the battalion chief downtown. So when the division chief goes home at night, at 5 o'clock at night, normally he has everything set up, but we were going to give a little bit of an extra incentive pay to that position. So yeah, because that's what they've been doing. That's what we do now. And I think about 2 chiefs back, I think Teresa Everett might have been doing that, but I don't know if she was. But I was more than willing to say, hey, if you really at night, all he's doing is getting the call offs and stuff, but that's worthy. And kind of being out there on the weekend. There'd be still 3 chiefs on the weekend, but 1 chief would be the main focal point for taking care of certain administrative needs on the weekend. So that chief would get a little bit of an incentive pay.
Okay. Is there a way that I could see that? I just want what, the differential when that pay has been assessed for this year in those particular instances?
Actually, I was talking with the division chief about that, and we just didn't come up with an exact number, because what we do is we put it in. It's called differential pay, and our guys put in for that. So we were trying to come up with a fair number. So I will get you a number that would be that we thought would be fair and that we could sustain. That all those chiefs would.
Okay, so I want to see what has been assessed in 2020 and any future occurrence that you are, wanting to have as differential pay going forward.
Yeah. In 2020, we didn't give any differential, just so you know, for that. Yeah, but for 2021, yes, we'll be more than glad to tell you that.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you so much for your time.
President,
Councilman Brewer.
I want to ask the chief about the lieutenant change to firefighters and the lieutenant promotional test.
Yes, sir.
When would that test take place?
I do not know. I've been here, so I'm not even going to go off the rumor that what I heard, but that's for the Civil Service Commission to give, and they were going to issue it. We were supposed to test back before the whole pandemic hit, and then the test was put on hold. So I think they have to get with the testing company and get everything reset up.
So it will be done before the end of this year if this budget is passed the way you have it amended so far?
I cannot speak to that, sir. They will be giving a test before the end of the year.
Okay. So that means if it's not done before the end of the year, that means you will go inside 2021 with these positions not filled at that time then, is that correct?
I'm sorry, sir. Can you say that
means
again?
If the test is not done before the year is out, you will go inside of 2021 if this budget is passed as amended without those positions being filled at the time because the test hasn't taken place, correct?
Correct. Everybody would still stay in the same, would still be operating the way we are right now today, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So just to kind of maybe help us regroup, I know the hour is drawing. Any particular, do you want to just restate, just to keep everybody abreast, what the changes you're proposing for CPO 2020-51, just so everybody's clear in terms of the raises. And then we've had an exhaustive conversation about police, and I presume that if that's your pleasure or another member of the council's pleasure to propose a 3% or 2% or what have you raise, that will be in an amendment form when we get to our next meeting on November 2nd. So you kind of want to just kind of give another overview, if you will, and then maybe we can have any final questions or thoughts and hopefully wrap this up. Councilwoman Atkins.
I'm gonna try to summarize. So for salaries and wages, the proposal is to, how do I want to say this? Okay, I'll say this, including no pay increase for police and fire. And with the changes proposed, which was no elected official receive increase in pay. Any salary $30,000 and higher, well, higher than 30,000 did not receive an increase in pay. The 30,000 threshold was due to the median income for the city of Gary of a little 30, it was close to 30,000. Then it would be a slight decrease from the proposed of 30,334,333, which is a 0.5% decrease from proposed. I would like for the council to consider the 3% increase in salary, but that increase is not in the number that I just stated.
Gotcha. And so in part, funding that increase comes from not doing the raises that have been proposed in this budget, as well as the cuts from the operations side. And so I know I also want to recognize that Mr. Bill Outlar, our financial advisor, is here. And so I think it will be great if he, along with you, and I'm certainly willing to, if this is an amendment, I'm willing to be a co-sponsor on it as it takes its shape. Should probably go through the numbers to make sure we're clear in terms of what the parity piece would be for a police raise and what we'd be required to do for the fire department. And then taking into consideration what Attorney Colvin has said about gas, and if there's other areas that she would like to raise concerns about, she should raise those pretty soon, so that when we get to our November 2nd meeting, we have something in writing, ideally, that we can all look at in terms of an amendment. And if it's the pleasure of this council to vote on that amendment, we'll do that and see what the results are. I just wanted to kind of lay that out there as a suggested roadmap, because I know that time is of the essence. But in any event, are there any questions related to CPO 2020-51 generally? Councilwoman Brown and then Councilman Lay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was clear in terms of what we said, that anybody who was over $30,000 would not get a raise. Am I correct or am I incorrect?
That's correct. That basically, if the current base salary, the 2020 salary, is $30,000 or less, then you would not get a raise.
Okay.
Then you would get a raise. I'm sorry. If it's 30,000 or less, you would get a raise. If it's more than 30,000, you would not get a raise. And of course, no elected officials would be getting any raise.
So is, Mr. President, I'm sorry, Mr. Lay.
Okay, we got out of order. I'm sorry. Councilman Lay and then Councilman Brewer.
Let Councilman Brewer go. I'll wait.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney Lay. So is the raise that we're talking about with the 30,000 less, is that what the administration's proposing? I want to make sure we're clear, because we can't increase other.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
So it's only what the.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not giving
So
raises.
if they, no. I just took their numbers and put it in, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm clear. Anywhere where a raise was proposed for someone who made $30,000 or less, you're saying that raise can stay in the budget?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And President Godwin, you said something about, I didn't understand you when you started speaking before. It says, you said something about no increase, and then you said something, you kind of confused me.
Oh,
A little bit, I'm not sure I'm following what you're saying.
so I think what I said is that if the current base salary is 30,000 or less.
No, this is outside of the 30,000. I thought you were talking about the entire budget. You said something about no increase or something like that.
Elected officials.
Elected officials.
Oh, okay.
So city clerk, city judge, council persons would not get a raise in what we're talking about now.
Got you.
And then I did say that, I suggested Mr. Outlar, Atkins, and maybe members of the Finance Committee and yourself, look at these numbers, because whatever we put together, I'd like for us to actually have something in hand in terms of what's being proposed as an amendment to the budget, so that we all know what we're looking at. And I know obviously that whatever we do has to be adopted on Monday. And I also want to ask that legal question, if I may, but I do want to recognize Councilman Lay because he's been waiting.
I can wait. Go ahead with your question.
Okay.
I can wait.
I wanted to ask a question for Attorney Williams and Attorney Colvin. In terms of, so let's say this, we have a budget before us, an amendment is made on the floor with something in writing, ideally, for everybody to refer to. Let's say hypothetically that this budget as amended passes with 5 votes. At that point, it goes to the mayor, is that correct? And he would have to sign it or not sign it or whatever that day. If we say that November 2nd is the deadline for the council to adopt the budget.
Given the deadline, yes, he wouldn't have time to pocket veto because that would go beyond the November 6th deadline.
November 2nd deadline.
No, the November 6th deadline to have it in Gateway.
But I guess my question is can any action in terms of a council vote or a signing or a veto have any effect after November 2nd at midnight? That is to say, if there's a veto that comes on the 3rd or it's signed on the 3rd, are we then out of compliance with the requirement that a budget be adopted by November 2nd, 2020?
I would, this is a case of first impression for me, but given my interpretation of the guidelines, yes. Because you would have adopted a budget.
Right.
You adopted it once it's passed. Now, the mayor then can execute his authority. And if he vetoes it, that creates the unique situation. But I think you would have adopted one, but it wouldn't be fully executed until the mayor signs. And if the mayor vetoes, I believe you would have to be prepared to have a meeting to either attempt to override that veto or simply allow the budget to revert back to the 2020 budget.
And that reversion, if I may, that reversion would be 2020 as 2020 originally, not 2020 as amended this year, right? So we go back to what was passed in 2019.
What is passed in 2020 is what is the 2020 budget. So the amendments that occurred this year are the 2020 budget. If there was a reversion back to the 2020 budget, it would be back to the budget that we have right now. That's number one. Number two, with regard to passage, the council is responsible for passing the budget by the 2nd. However, the total ordinance process is not circumvented. It's still in play.
So what, can you explain a bit further?
Still applies.
Hmm?
Everything that applies to the signing of ordinances still applies.
Right. So what I'm saying is that if it's signed after the 2nd, are we then out of compliance with having a because I guess we've passed the budget, but if it's unsigned, it's not really adopted, right?
The council has to adopt the budget. That's what the law says by November 2nd.
Okay. So basically, there's no other action if it's vetoed on November 3rd, right? And we have an emergency meeting on November 5th. Is that still valid in terms of having done what we were supposed to do by the 2nd? Or are we then saying whatever could happen on the 5th is what will be entered into Gateway by the 6th?
I'm not the corporation counsel, so
Okay.
I can't speak as the city's attorney. However, in my opinion, if he were to veto the ordinance, then that would be the end.
So that would be the end. We would just do what the current year is.
Yes,
Gotcha.
but I'm not corporation counsel.
Okay. And Attorney Williams, is your understanding that it will revert back to 2020 as amended this year, or to the last budget that the council in total, I guess?
Foreman, I think. Come on, remember? Oh, those are yours. You just finished. Those are yours, but pour things into a bowl now, just because.
Chief O'Donnell, I think you're unmuted. All right, Attorney Williams.
Well, two things. One, I respectfully disagree with our chief of staff. I believe that the legislative process by statute has a clause for the mayor to exercise his power to veto and for the council then to attempt to override that veto. I do not believe these prophylactic dates that are set out by on Gateway would supersede the state statute to allow the council to exercise their authority to attempt to override the veto. I think you could attempt to override that veto, first of all. Second, I have no idea as it relates to the reverting back to the 2020 as amended or reverting back to the original 2020. And again, that's probably more of an accounting question, but I would seem to agree with the chief of staff on that, because by the council amending the 2020 budget at some point, that does in fact become the 2020 budget. So I would, again, not a legal opinion, but maybe a layman's accounting opinion, I would agree with the chief of staff as it relates to that, because once you amend the budget, that becomes a part of the budget. So if it reverts back to the most recent 2020 budget.
Sounds good. Thank you, Attorney Williams. Attorney Lay?
I agree with that. I agree with the last statement made by Attorney Williams and Attorney Colvin. Yeah, we have amended to 2020, so that is now the 2020 budget, whatever we're doing currently. I do have one question. What is the final date for publication on Gateway?
We must adopt the budget by November 2nd, and we have until November 6th to actually enter it into Gateway.
So there can be modifications after November the 2nd by the executive branch before we go to a Gateway.
No, I don't believe there can be modifications. I think the executive branch can exercise its authority to veto what's sent to them. The only modification would then be the council's attempt to override that veto.
Well, let me give you a statute. Maybe I misread it. Indiana Code 36-4-7-3, paragraph C. I believe it's a conflict in law there. I believe the mayor does have authority to function. I'm going to say it's unfortunate, but I think the executive branch can function sometime in there using that statute. Are you familiar with that statute, Attorney Colvin?
I am, sir.
Am I interpreted it halfway right?
I believe you are.
So I would suggest you read Indiana Code 36-4-7-3-73C. I believe it's an error, that statute, but it is the law. Let me ask another question. What does these emergency hiring by the police commission, what do that do to affect what we're doing with the budget?
Councilman Lay, can you go back to, before you move forward, can you go back to that statute when you say that it gives the mayor the authority to function? Can you just expire on that a little bit for me? Thank you.
Yeah, there's an error in the law. I'm pretty sure the chief of staff is aware of it. I'm not sure who else is aware of it because she has cited that statute to the council earlier, and that is Indiana Code 36-4-7-3, paragraph C. I believe it's C, contradicts B. It is an error, in my opinion, both as an accountant and as an attorney in the law. I'm not sure how you correct it, but there's an error there that allows the executive branch to function during that brief period of time, I guess, between the second and the publication on the 6th, notwithstanding a veto. So if you take a look at that statute, let me be crystal clear, and it's wrong. It says the mayor can increase or decrease certain changes. I believe it's wrong. I know it is wrong, but I'm not sure how you correct it short of suing the state legislature.
And the only exception is the police and fire department, right? It says
there is no exception.
It says section 3A, this section does not apply to compensation paid by a city to members of its police and fire departments.
Go to C, read C to the council.
Okay, C says compensation fixed under this section may be increased or decreased by the executive during the budget year for which it is fixed.
Yeah, well, you're doing it in the year it's fixed. Let's assume we change by 1% to salary, as I understand it. And again, I've never used this statute. I've only read it, so I don't have any experience to rely on. By my reading and interpretation and discussing it with the State Board of Accounts, that C gives extraordinary powers to the mayor, which I think is wrong and it also is unfortunate, but that currently is the law of this state. I do not believe the police and firemen would be exempt. I just think it's bad law.
Right.
It's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't exempt.
I was looking at paragraph A, section 3, paragraph A, as that said this section doesn't apply to compensation paid by the cities and police and fire departments. That's the only reason I.
Yeah, but isn't that under 36? I'm not looking at anything. I'm trying to recall.
It's the beginning, the top of the section, 36-4-7-3, paragraph A.
Right, A, B, and C, but C, I think overrules. C should not exist.
Right, because it's contradictory.
Once you put C in there, Attorney Coleman, do you see what I'm trying to say? Once you introduce C, it overrides A and B.
It is contradictory, yes.
It may be contradictory as to the mayor's authority, but I don't think it's at all contradictory when the entire section does not apply to police and fire. It's saying that in A, that section, the entire code under that section does not apply to police and fire. There's no contradiction there. And I assure the council, I've never heard of this statute. I will take a read of it, but I'm confident that the Gateway Northern State Board of Accounts will allow the mayor to submit a budget that was not approved by the council.
That's also inaccurate. The State Board of Accounts will allow such a change. Again, I believe C, if we eliminated C, then I believe your interpretation is correct. Is when C is in there, I believe it's such a contradiction in the law itself.
Look, may I ask a question? So when I look, I don't want to turn this into a CLE session, but I think it's an important
I need
point.
the credit.
Me too. So I want to read this carefully here and make sure I'm hearing it right. It says compensation fixed under this section may be increased or decreased by the executive. And here's the part I want to emphasize. during the budget year for which it is fixed. And so to me, that would mean that the increase or decrease would have to be for 21. It would have to happen in 21, not in 20. That is to say, if we pass a budget in 20, you couldn't change it between those days and you entered it into the gateway system, because the budget we pass is not for this year, but for next year. So any change he'd have to make in 21, and I'd suggest he would have to propose an amendment to the 2021 budget in order to do that, as he did this year, right, in February and March. I don't think he would have the power between the 2nd and the 6th to look at what we adopted and said, no, I'm going to change this, because it wouldn't be for this budget year.
I think you have a valid point. I'm not as sure as Attorney Williams is what that statute means, because it is a contradiction in the law. I believe in our discussions I've had with Attorney Colvin, we looked at that. I believe we both questioned when you must exercise that authority. I believe that authority is exercised the moment that a budget is sent to the mayor, not in a different year, that budget. And that budget would be the budget we would send forward on November the 2nd. That, in fact, the only thing that I believe he has to do, based upon previous conversation with the State Board of Accounts, they suggest notice. Again, this was not an attorney I was having a discussion with. This was a very seasoned member of the State Board of Accounts. When I first, long before Attorney Colvin may have recognized that problem, I contacted the State Board of Accounts and asked him, I said, well, this seems to be, matter of fact, the name of the person was Charlie Pride, not the singer, but I did contact him, and I said, well, what is this? This appears to me to be a contradiction in the law. How does this exist? And of course, he agreed it was a contradiction, but as I understood it, but again, I can't say you're wrong because I don't know. And I believe that's the first step toward learning. I don't know whether it applies in the year 21 or whether it applies at any time before you publish in Gateway. I just simply have decided with what little I know that it applies to what you put in Gateway. I think, and I certainly don't want to speak with her, I think Chief of Staff, I think initially you may have said it. I don't forget what you said, but I don't think we agreed at that point. So I don't know, to be honest with you. I do know it exists, but no matter when you do it, you have that the authority lies in this executive branch. If they do it between the 2nd and the 6th, let's say they changed it by $2. They increased somebody by $2 that made 31,000, and they made that change. And of course, they should notify us. I'm not sure how that would be handled. It could be handled the way I'm saying, or they would tell them, no, wait until January the 2nd and add the $2. And they wouldn't have to get council approval, I think is the important thing. They could do it.
Mr. President,
Attorney Williams?
if the interpretation of Attorney Lay was accurate, and again, we both are talking about a case of first impression, so neither of us are for sure, the mayor would never have a reason to come back to the council to increase the budget. There would be no need to come back to the council in the year to add increases to the budget or decreases. Based on the interpretation that's presented by Attorney Lay, the mayor could just summarily do it. That, I assure you, is not accurate. No court will ever allow that. I assure you, the only form that Gateway will accept is the Form 1 document that is signed off and approved by this council. And if that document is vetoed, it will revert to the 2020 budget as last submitted. I have that on good standing with accounting firms that work in several municipalities. I would welcome that litigation because surely that is an abuse of the executive's power, and they would not allow that. I assure you.
I agree in part with what he said. Yes, that would be litigation. That is absolutely, you can't just ignore the law. I'm sure under some circumstances, maybe that is a new policy this council has. It's there. It now has to be interpreted. So you would have to have that third party interpretation. And again, I think one of the worst things you can have, I've learned in my years of practice, is litigation. You don't want litigation. It is the last resort because it is time consuming. So I would agree in part that if that did go to a court, I'm not even sure who the defendants would have to be. I pretty much understand who the plaintiffs would have to be. I've seen something similar. I believe in the end, Attorney Williams would be right. The court would probably strike that down as being unconstitutional or against statutory law. I just don't know what month and what year they would do it. It probably would go all the way up, but ultimately I do agree they would strike C. C would no longer exist. But I'm not, but once C does exist, it would require, whether it's done by this council, we looked at it, and I'm talking about a non-attorney, the State Board of Accounts, and we concluded in our discussion that yes, it would require a litigation, and two, probably that statute, that C would be struck down, but until it is, that is what the law is in this state. And that's on, I was just simply trying to inform you of something that I know, and I know that then the administration is aware of. That's all.
I guess, and I would just say quickly that it's possible that it's not a conflict. And here's why I say that, because to me, this is exactly what the administration did earlier this year, right? I mean, compensation fixed under this section may be increased or decreased by the executive again during the budget year, which it is fixed. And so once you're within a budget year, of course, you can make changes, as we did. We raised salaries, we did a lot of things. But of course, in order to do that, you have to come back before the council. And I think there's other statutes that would make it clear that the council would have to vote on any kind of increases or decreases, specifically increases, but either of them in terms of a change to the budget. So I don't think it's necessarily a conflict. I think it's just that we have to look at what during the budget year means, which I think certainly in practice and custom has been that once you've already passed the budget, it's entered in the gateway, you're in your budget year, you need to make changes based on changed circumstances, you come before the council to make those changes. So it doesn't necessarily have to be conflictual, but it's certainly something that we look into. All right, any other questions or discussion related to CPO 2020-51?
Mr. Chair, not 51, but I should have just asked Ms. Arlene this on the side. But Ms. Arlene, I had a quick question this is on 50 though, on consolidated operations, on the general fund. We had the property tax listed for 2020, but I didn't see it in 2021. Is that right? It was a line item under capital expenses. And
Was
then
it
the property.
a total amount? Because I think on that page we had totals.
Oh yeah,
So it really wasn't in that particular department. It's a total for all funds.
Okay, it says property tax cap and it's at 48 million.
Right, it's a formula. It's not related to 602.
Okay.
It's just a formula.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Councilman Brewer.
Mr. President, I want to go back to the fuel for just a moment there. Has there been an audit in the past couple of years where I'll just say no, but has this administration did an audit in 2020 on the fuel consumption?
An audit, no.
No. What is the process when individuals either let go, retire, to making sure that we're taking them out the system. Because I do know we had some problems with people abusing fuel that did not have the authority to do it, but because they had the code and it was not taken out the system, they still had access to it.
What happens now when an employee is terminated or retires or resigns, the department head is required to provide paperwork to HR indicating what equipment that employee had and whether or not it was returned. They are to immediately notify IT, who then turns off your email address, turns off any codes that you might have. So that's something that's now in place, and that's what happens now.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion related to CPO 2020-51? Any questions or comments from other folks who are in attendance, folks from the public? Well, we've had a Councilman Brewer.
I would just add, as the proposal amendment will come, that it will be in 3 tiers, the 3%, the 2%, and the 1.5%. So that way we can make a conscious decision on, where the funds is at. I don't want to make sure that we're running too tight on anything. So I would like to see exactly where the numbers look in all 3 tiers.
Right. And I think Councilwoman Atkins, I want to thank her for doing an extraordinary job in putting together these spreadsheets and numbers and helping us to be more efficient and fiscally responsible. We know that governments everywhere are tightening and cutting out the fat and focusing on essential services and the delivery of essential services to residents. And that's our chief responsibility. I know a lot of people want raises and certainly recognize the work that people do. But at the same time, one of our number one responsibilities, perhaps this is our number one responsibility, is to oversee the finances and to pass the budget for the city. So I wanted to publicly thank Councilwoman Atkins for her great work on this initiative. And I look forward to her work and the Finance Committee's work, along with all council people and Mr. Outlaw, our financial advisor, to come ready to roll on Monday, November the 2nd, to wrap this budget season up in a way that will be the best that we can do on behalf of the city and citizens of Gary. I think we have any further comments, and so our Finance Committee meeting is concluded. Thank you.